Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is 25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. Yeah, I'm not really sure where this is going to go or what these are going to be. There's 25. I think we'll just get straight into it. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and let's see what we've got.
The United States often draws a lot of flack from the rest of the world for everything. From its foreign policy to the way it runs its domestic affairs. In fact, it seems like there are few things that can divide the world more evenly and more strongly than asking people what their opinion is of the United States. Everyone has an opinion. Even in the same city, you'll meet people who fall on the extreme sides of the spectrum. But what is it exactly that causes America to be so messed up? Even America's own politicians can't seem to stop talking about how messed up things are. Well, today we're going to take a deeper look. Are things really as bad as everyone seems to think they are? I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true.
Okay,
and as a very important note, this list was produced by both a United States citizen and 2 European citizens that relocated to the United States. It's written to be as fair as possible.
Okay, we've got an ad, but let's get into it when we get back.
Possible. No, I'm not 2 Europeans. Or am I?
No, you're not.
All right, let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world. Americans are held to an unrealistic standard. Since the rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music, they know a lot about our country. But let's be honest, they never studied it. People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. But neither does half the United Kingdom, and they're on the same continent. It turns out that all of us are pretty bad at geography. You'd think America would be better at it, however, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone. And that's true, but who doesn't? Germany, France, Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy on each other and ourselves. Moving on, America has been called racist.
Okay.
Please don't take...
I feel like, the geography one I feel like is... I don't know if it's targeted at American. I've never heard that before, but I feel like worldwide there are going to be loads of people that don't know things about certain countries, etc., etc. I didn't know that Czechoslovakia was even a country in the first place. So, yeah, I guess that puts me on the stupid list. Yeah, I am embarrassed that I've even admitted that, but yeah, let's see what we got the rest of the video.
This wrong way. Racism definitely exists, and it makes the news. But you know what else? America also has a vicious media, and all of the world watches it, sometimes more than their own media. So when something super bad happens in other countries, it might not even make the back page. Next, it's a...
Yeah, I feel like this one, there are racist people, unfortunately, everywhere. Not just in America, there are racist people in the UK, there are racist people in every single country. There are racist people, and yeah, thankfully they are a minority, but they exist everywhere. That is not like a one country thing.
Common misconception that Americans don't use public transport. While it's true that we use...
This is one we heard. I'm pausing a lot, guys. This is one that we heard before we came to the US. This was a big one that we heard before we came to the US. And particularly in San Francisco, we were told no one uses it. It's awful. It is rubbish. And we actually really liked using it. So each to their own, I guess.
Cars a lot. Many regions in America have great public transport, or at least just as good as Europe. Besides, what good is a train if nobody can afford it? We're looking at you, UK. Moving on. America does /has/is fill in the blank. America is far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws, cultures, and quirks. Some states have the death penalty. Some don't. Some have strict gun laws, and some don't.
Okay.
Some have free college. Some don't. Some have tax, and yeah, some don't. So just like you can't say Europe is so-and-so, you can't say the same about the US.
Yeah.
As an additional note, the states are far more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard. Furthermore, some states pass legislation that directly contradicts the federal government. This is because in the US, the federal government is not the highest authority, the states are.
Okay, yeah, I feel like this is one we've said quite a lot, is that you can't really say like America as a country. I feel like if you're going to compare with like Europe, because Europe is made up of so many countries with all different laws, etc. But so is the US. Like the US is made up of states that all have their own independent ways of doing things, and I feel like we've said so many times before, like the US could literally just be 50 different countries, like how big they are and like their own way of doing things, etc. Yeah, I feel like it's not really fair to compare.
Establish the fact that America isn't a single entity. Many believe that Americans only speak one language, but that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France or the UK or Italy, or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too. That being said, over 20% of the US is bilingual. Now, let's talk about the military, because people outside the US will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank. Nobody is naive enough to think that the US doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country. There isn't a nation on earth that would do that selflessly. But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something. On a more or less lighter note, Americans are fat. You ever been to the UK lately? There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery. Yes, America does have an obesity problem, but not all citizens are involved in it. I am. A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives. Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything. There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages. In Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich, white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
The fact is that the US is hugely diverse, and the American experience is completely different with and without money.
Okay.
Translation? The problem isn't healthcare or education, it's economic inequality, almost exclusively. And speaking of inequality, many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe. This is usually what foreign citizens say until they actually come here.
Yeah. So this was like before we went to America. That was a big thing. Like if I don't know, like family and friends were like, oh, make sure you stay safe. And we like, especially when we went to New York, we were like, oh, what about the guns and things? Like, what if we see people with guns and blah, blah, blah. Like, I've never felt more safe. I feel more safe, like, at the times I've been in America, so California, Texas, and New York, than I do when I go to England. Like, straight up. I feel more safe.
Logic, Paris, Brussels, London, Madrid, and almost every other city in Europe is unsafe as well. Yes, there are guns, but most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired. In fact, most Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans. All this being said so far, people still expect all Americans to relish in a life of our stereotypes. Guns, fast food, and freedom! What I'm saying is, a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic. But here's an honest question. Have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK? There's no shame in having pride in your country. Us Americans are definitely patriotic, but so is the rest of the world, as they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from. But that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad. This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us. Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample. But in their defense, many times, they're right. Yes, this can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right? No? Okay, fine. Back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative, by our European representative. I love all of you. Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the US is lagging behind. Similar to topics we've already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account: reporting. Every nation reports its own statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the US and the UK, is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except that the US counts people one way and the US counts them another.
Okay.
That still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing. In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish. But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life. Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life. The thing is, though, they don't use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning.
Yeah.
This list sounds great coming from an American. I was totally the one who should have read this one, but I digress. On a totally different but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer.
Yeah. Funny thing is, this still makes me laugh, is that the UK called it soccer first. We went and changed it. For what reason?
Actually, a lot of the world calls it soccer. Even parts of Ireland still call it soccer. Oh, what do I mean by still? I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer. The word soccer is an abbreviation of association and first appeared in universities in the 1880s, sometimes using the variant spelled soccer with a K. The word is sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been fond of shortened forms such as breakers for breakfast and rugger for rugby football. Britain actually started using the word football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism. This next one, Tristan couldn't believe. Could you not?
No.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it? Why don't they just leave the window open? Mosquitoes, at least in Florida. But here's why they might be joining us soon. During the 2003 European heatwave, 70,000 people died. This was in large part due to the fact that European homes and buildings are not typically equipped with air conditioning. While they laugh at the Americans for this, hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures, especially since children and the elderly are very susceptible.
I'd love a
Again, I
aircon.
stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the summer. Winter, absolutely. Open windows. Moving into the top 9, that's a weird number. Top 9. Many parts of the world accuse the United States of accounting for 25% of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice. But it also accounts for 25% of the world's economic activity. The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US. Next, let's talk about how the world thinks Americans are ruining English. Actually,
What?
both British English and American English have diverged from a common 16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American English is closer to the original than British English. For example, American English has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes.
Oh.
This is only one example, but it goes to show that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English. On a totally different note, did you know that Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true. The fact is that in America, you have plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and the list goes on. In fact, several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the US and Europe is that if you want to live in the suburbs in the US, you can, but you don't have to. Now, this next
Okay.
one is just offensive. Americans are all dumb rednecks. Well, there are certainly Americans
I'd be interested to know who, like, what people are actually thinking this. Like, crazy.
who fit this stereotype. The vast majority don't. Most Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated, and most of them are not very different from Europeans in any significant way.
Yeah.
Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden and Switzerland. Fair warning, the last 5 on our list get a bit dark and crazy.
Okay.
Starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power, even more so than Russia and China. This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But in our strong defense, Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much, much more. Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed. All right, number 4 is sure to be a shocker to
Okay.
a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true. Except for a few places,
Never
the
seen
only
one.
people you'll ever see carrying
Well-
guns in America
Apart from when we went to the driving range, the shooting range, but we never saw them in public apart from like a police officer at the airport or something like that.
are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in Switzerland than you ever would in America. Okay. We admit that, like most stereotypes, there is some truth to this next one, but it's been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right-wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are crazy right-wingers, most of them aren't. In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays. This next one
Okay.
sounds like a legit stand-up joke. If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this is what happens in America. As with most things that concern America, they're wrong. You can't be denied emergency medical care in the US. That would go against the Hippocratic Oath. The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later. Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now.
Yeah, like you're not gonna be left to die, but you will have debt. But at least you're not gonna be dead.
Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans.
Oh,
The average
okay.
household debt in the US, OECD, is 113% of the household's income. In the UK, it's 156%.
Wow.
In Sweden, 173.
That is
And in
high.
Denmark, it's a whopping 305%. So, what are some misconceptions about the US that
That was good. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to check any more of his videos out. I'm not sure what else he kind of does. I think it's just like 25 reasons for things. But let me know in the comments below. Yeah, most of them, I can't believe that somebody actually has thought those. Well, multiple people have thought that they are true. Some of them I can kind of understand why people think that is true, because if you don't know much about the US and you base it off movies and things like that, then I kind of get it. And then, yeah, some are just people that clearly are very just in their own little bubble, need to explore a bit more. But yeah, have a fantastic day, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.